Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Diriyah Biennale. We are so happy and blessed to have Curtis Kulig here, who is an artist visiting from New York via North Dakota. And your studio practice actually includes mediums in painting, sculpture, film, and also what you are most known for at the moment is about a decade ago, very loyal audience following you for the Love Me saying, the Love Me art piece, the Love Me that has been on so many walls and alleys and the minds of people all over the world. So I guess I'm gonna just kick off and start. We've talked about this for a while in the last couple of days, but I really want to just share, how this started, the Love Me kind of movement that it's become, and how it stuck.
Yeah, hi everybody. The Love Me movement and how it started. This is the question I always get asked, and then I turn circles in my head a little bit, thinking about where exactly it came from. The simplistic version would be, it was a very honest and I guess vulnerable plea that I was thinking that I was in contact with at the time, and I took the side of being in, I would say, a graffiti art world at that time, and I had been around a lot of friends that were doing things in public, so I kind of transpired this message into the streets, being very personal to me at that time. In the beginning, it was a feeling that was very personal to me, and I had started putting it out there, and from that, it gained the attention and kept moving forward, and now it's turned into a bit of maybe something that's less of what it was at the beginning, more of a logo-based entity for me, rather than what it was 15 years ago. But I guess anything in 15 years is going to change, but much less personal, and it's went more in the direction of allowing other people to interpret it for what it is to them, and that's the more interesting aspect for me now in present day.
Do you think, so it's so simple, the Love Me, and like we discussed, it starts as a plea, turns into a pledge in a way. But how did the partnerships, so I'm going to jump into collaborations for a second, because so much of the Love Me movement has been catapulted really by some of your non-commercial and commercial engagements with partnerships. How did partnerships, those kind of collaborations, allow the Love Me to take a life on its own? And for the good, or also for your attachment to it, and also in a very candid way, the commercialization of it in a way, and the non-commercialization of it.
Right. Yeah, the commercial aspect of it was something that came to me, and I would say at the time that the first corporation to approach me was Nike in 2008. Yeah. So to start off with a collaboration with such I guess iconic or very popular brand, catapulted it to many different levels of collaboration. At that moment, it was never made to be this commercial entity, and it fell into that zone. And at a certain point, there was a lot of brands that had already been taking it from the visuals on the street. And when it came to trademarking and things like that, which when it came to even in the beginning, when I would say the first maybe 4 or 5 times that I had seen it on other products without my permission.
You saw it before you knew it spread.
Yeah, and it was something that, I mean, it was honestly, it was flattering at that time, and then it happened 4 or 5 or 6 times, and I was like, you know, it became a little bit of a thing. So then me and my team started talking about a trademark, because at that time it wasn't trademarked.
Yeah.
And we looked into trademarking, and in America, trademarking goes through LLCs, it goes through trademark, and there's you know, there's a lot of components to it and a lot of steps to be approved and have this ownership of. So
Yeah, because how do you own love? Like the word love,
absolutely.
the concept of love.
Yeah, it's particular. So what it actually falls into is a category of the stylized version of this.
The cursive and
exactly.
the
right,
colors
right.
and the content.
I mean, I do not own the word love, nor me, or the combo. So it's a stylized version. And it was, you know, it was a lot of back and forth, and at a certain point, it had gotten to the arena of, well, what do you make? You know what I mean? Like, what? So, are you a clothing company, or do you make coffee, or you know, what is your brand that you're trademarking, or what is this thing that you're trademarking? And we didn't make. I didn't make anything, nor I would say. I mean, on my own, I have maybe made T-shirts that we give out to friends or something simple, but I don't really sell Love Me merchandise that comes from me. Right. I sell more than enough Love Me merchandise that comes from others, which is the collaboration aspect. But in terms of my studio practice and studio, I don't have, like, you can order something, you know, a knick-knack, and then we send it to you. Yeah. So we didn't really have anything of our own, and in that same time frame, companies were asking to work with us, and we had learned that if we are working with a company, if we are working with a Nike, if we're putting this plea on a shoe, then it entered the category of now being able to claim that as an item, as an object, where now we've worked in the shoe category with Nike, but we've worked in the shoe category. So we started to be able to trademark these different arenas as I was doing collaborations. And in terms of that, over a 5-year period, there were a lot of collaborations. So we were just kind of checking off categories to an extent.
It's interesting that in a way you had to own it to spread it. And that question comes up a lot here, is, you know, how do you actually own trademark, copyright ideas, and, you know, if it's a message that should be really adopted by everyone, did you think trademarking actually helped spread it or create a kind of movement around it because of and so what does that style also do for art, or for the collection and the attribution to art? Right.
Yeah, I mean, obviously working with companies to a certain capacity, and you know, having their followings, and I didn't have that at that point, so that was putting it out there to a pretty serious degree, which in hindsight I look at now and I think those were very important times as well. I mean, it really pushed the message, and it really just pushed that entity that was able to spread universally and reach more people that I wasn't necessarily reaching. I was very New York centric at that time. So, you know, people from downtown knew it, but universally it had not spread that far.
Did it spread? So one of the powerful things, and probably the most powerful thing about the Love Me, your work, is the way that it engages communities. And from New York, I mean, how you saw within or before, after your first collaborations with Nike, and within the neighborhoods of New York, how it kind of spread and how it engaged the public. Can you tell us a little bit about, because I want to ultimately get to kind of describing how the public is engaged here and how different or universal it is, but how did it start, and how was the reaction from the public? What did you feel? And
Right.
as exhausted as you may be with one term,
Right.
did that invigorate it when you
Right.
see people react so differently to it?
Right. Yeah, maybe exhausted after maybe 15, 16 years of doing it. I mean, I don't get exhausted of it. Yeah, it's the community response to it has always been. I wouldn't even say the community response. I would say just generally, 99.9% of the response of somebody interacting with it has been a positive thing. So for me, it's almost even less about the message and more about it just kind of being this positive force that just sits and is taken in to a way where most people are taking it, or digesting it as something that is a positive aspect in their life. I have had few instances where somebody's called it sad and put it in that realm, but very, very few. It generally falls into this category of a positive entity, which it didn't necessarily have those intentions. So it's pretty magical in that way.
Yeah, and your first public engagement, that was in New York.
First.
Any stories that with the first kind of
I
connection
actually
to it?
think a first public engagement would be maybe in like a bathroom in Los Angeles or something like that.
Nice.
But yeah, and then it just, like most things in life, it just kind of builds steam, and you do it to different scale and more of, and different colors, and yeah, so that aspect of it happened very naturally.
You were telling me today, and I wanted to share this with the audience. You were talking to me about, so amazing thing about Bring You Here is it is such a universal message, but you also were able to, I mean, one of the beautiful things about being in a Biennale, I think, and having a conversation with artists across the world, for the world, is that you were able to Arabize the message and translate the message, and for the first time ever.
It was, for the first time ever, I have
What was
done
that?
it in Arabic, which is, for me, and I hadn't thought of it until I arrived.
No
I mean,
other language,
I've had
right?
simple, exactly. I've had simple, like I understood that while I was in New York and we were going back and forth. But once I arrived, I really did think through from everywhere that I've been and played around with the idea of I've never followed through with it. So it's definitely a transition for me, and it's definitely, I mean, I'm really happy with the results of it, and I'm really happy to bring it here and be here in the moment. So. And
can we say that أحبني?
Ahabni.
So
I know I butcher the language.
No, not at all. On the contrary, I think it's really interesting the story of actually adapting it for a global stage in Arabic, speaking kind of to the world. One of the things that when I was looking at some of your work and I was noticing the locations that you had and the different areas and alleys and walls and bathrooms. And the things that were selected for you, maybe. So people that, multiplied your work through their own placement. I wanted to kind of really get into your mind of how do you choose your spaces, and how did you used to choose them, and how do you choose them now after so many partnerships and knowing what works, or
Right.
what's the criteria of choosing those,
Right.
tagging those spaces?
Yeah, it's interesting to think of. I think that I approach it in terms of urban environments. I approach it the same way. I think that it's not really planned out. I mean, planned out enough to have the certain tool with me, but not planned out enough where I study a spot or locations necessarily. Yeah, I think that it's more sporadic, and I think that it's, you know, if I think of it in terms of environment as well. Environment, the amount of traffic that goes by that area, foot traffic, automobile traffic, directions that it's facing. Yeah, I think that I choose those spots in a similar way to when I started it in the beginning. I think that it's just kind of doing an overlook of what's going on in this environment and deciding, you know, even in terms of color is such a powerful aspect of art as well. So the colors matter. I can be very particular about it. In terms of stickers as well, people have definitely poked at me a bit as far as keeping things straight or the repeats or which way it's facing. So I definitely am a bit obsessive in that manner. Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have the sticker on my back, and
I know, I saw that she came in with it waving in the wind. It was perfect.
That was great. Walking in, it's interesting because you do feel a bit of a demand.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, I wanted to actually just talk to you a little bit about the experience here at the Biennale and your first engagements with the public. I know that you did a workshop for kids, and that's going to lead me to a couple of questions about your future and your past. But where, I mean, what did you observe in this context, in this Biennale, in this moment now, after, you know, several years of the rush of major brand collaborations, and to do something for the inaugural edition of a first Biennale in a country that's completely, you know, opened, where the public is tremendously fluent and proficient in this digital space, and is in now a time where we're interacting in and activating these public spaces. And to be part of that, knowing that, and observing the interactions, you know, what were your experiences? Any stories that touched you? Any reactions or responses that moved you?
Yeah, there's been so many already. It's really magical in that way. Yeah, first of all, I'm so honored to be here. But as far as the installation, I did 2 installations. One being it will be a bit performative in terms of public interacting with. It's a bit of a cove of 3 walls that will be continuously active as far as public is welcome to place stickers in certain sizes and colors where they feel, wherever they feel. I thought that it was important in that space to recognize that the idea behind it is really to you know, take the message for what it is and really have the freedom to be able to place it where you would like in terms of the wall. It's been amazing. I mean, watching, it's only been 3 days as well. There's been two instances that stick out to me, but the first being the beginning of the installation. I was trying to maybe do kind of corners and higher spots where, I mean, the wall is 9 feet high, 9.5 feet high. I don't know, what is that in meters? Yeah. Too high to reach. You have to be, everybody's calculating. High enough to where if I put my arm there, it's maybe like a bit more. So I was on a ladder, and
it's you and an arm.
Me and another arm, yes. Me with my arm up and another arm. So I was on a ladder, getting it started, getting the edges put together, trying to kind of like bring a little bit in to start it off and get those spots that might be a little bit more difficult, but also, you know, leave room for being able to maybe be a little bit more daring and put it a bit higher. and just everybody that I had met in that first day from the Biennale was, I was on top of the ladder and I looked down and I had, I had my phone on, my phone was hooked up to the speaker, and I think a Miles Davis song or some jazz was playing, and I just looked down at everybody and saw everybody really like helping and working and cutting stickers and just putting things in their place. And I took it in for a bit, and then I also like to, I'm pretty focused, and when it comes to starting something like this, so then I got back to focusing on that, and it went on, the day went on, and when I left that night, that was what was in my head. I was like, wow, I wish I would have just relaxed a little bit more and could have taken a few more minutes to focus on getting this started, and just really took it in. But I did have a nice 30 seconds of just being like, wow, this is actually what it's all about. Like this engagement is it's the most important. So
You were telling me a story earlier. I'm going to put you on the spot of
a
mother and a daughter.
Yeah, that was from the workshop. Yeah, this 10-year-old girl, so sweet and such a talented, really has a talent. Hi, Savio.
Hey, Savio.
Welcome. Really has, I mean, academically has an idea of composition, and we were having a conversation, and she was telling me, she likes to make letters of smiley faces, and she hadn't seen, she had just come to the workshop not knowing about the installation necessarily, and she was talking about making letters of smiley faces, and I said, oh wow, that's amazing. I really like that. I was like, can I see what the letters look? So she started making some letters, and I was like, oh, those are cool. And we were both making them together, and I said, I have an installation that I'm doing here as well, that maybe after the workshop we can walk and you can participate. I'm doing, these adhesives that can be stuck, placed wherever you want them in this certain zone. And she was like, yeah, I would love that. So we finished the workshop, and I was like, she was like, can we walk over there? I was like, yeah. So we walked over there, and her mother came with, and we got there, and we took it in a little bit, and I was like, so grab a sticker, whatever size, whatever color, and her mother, she was maybe a little. Her mother was barely taller than her. She was 10 years old. Her mother was barely taller, and I said, let's see who can put an adhesive up the furthest on the wall. I said, I mean, if mom wins the as far as putting it the highest, I mean, this might be the last time that she could win this contest, based on, I think that you're growing at 10 years old. So she grabbed one and ran and like jumped at the absolute highest she could and put one up. And then her mother went and grabbed one and just ran full, and jumped, and it barely went higher than her daughter's. So and I was like, well, she definitely won, but I can't imagine next year mom being able to win the same contest. But yeah, even fun moments like that are just like, yeah, it's really nice.
Are you usually there? When do you usually come and install your art and go to the next project, or you usually wait, like pause a second to see how people interact with it?
I try. I mean, sometimes you get caught up in with studio projects and things. It turns into sometimes things are getting backed up, or projects are on hold, and things need to be worked on. So I always try to, be as present as I can and meditate on those moments, because I mean, those are the moments that are most important.
It's interesting, because I've asked this question to a few of the Biennale artists, and whether or not, if they could be a fly on the wall just to watch people's reactions or interactions or eye rolling, or with contemporary art, there is a lot of awe and confusion. But your message is so succinct and very more succinct than simple, and it transmits. One of the well, I mean, there's so many interactions that I've witnessed, but the interesting interaction was for me is when you took it into workshop form with the kids. And if anyone has the opportunity to take a little walk through the courtyard and walk through the reaction to Curtis's call for what was the question to the kids?
I mean, it was, I went in thinking that I was going to be a little bit more structured on the workshop. And maybe I mean, we're making art. I'm like, let's just do this. I basically put out there that let's, to some terminology, reference "love me" and like let's
react to it.
Absolutely. And the work was fantastic.
Yeah.
Truly, all of it was like and so different, and just it was really nice, and it was fun to be obviously working with the kids as well, and they felt excited and open to ideas. But I had magazines that they could cut out. I had markers. I had pencils. I had charcoals, I had every single paint, I had every aspect, and I started with even pencils, making let's start just making marks and warming up. Started with some color pencils. Jumped to the only thing that anybody did was broke the paints out, and we're like just going that's every single piece turned into a painting rather than a drawing or a collage or any. It all fell into a painting, and they turned out great. I mean, they're amazing.
So that was really interesting for me, and I'm going to open this up very soon to the public, since it is about that kind of public engagement. But what was interesting is the children chose, of all the mediums that you presented and laid out, they chose painting, all of them, every single one of them. And when I asked you, and I'm going to ask you again, because when I asked you what's next, or what's the ultimate, or what's the form of art that you wanted, the medium that you want to throw yourself into, you answered in a very interestingly similar way.
What did I say?
You said painting.
Yeah,
and
that's
when
what
I
it
asked
always comes. It always comes down to that for me. I mean, primarily, I consider myself a painter. That's what I take most serious in my practice. And
what's the inspiration of why you? I mean, where's the beginning of that art story? What medium did it speak to you in? Was it? Yeah,
that's what I grew up around from childhood, from when I can remember. My father's side of the family were all traditional oil painters. And when I mean traditional, very dense, academic oil painting, which pushed me away from art for many years, because I just looked at kind of these hyper-realistic oil paintings and thought, I can't do that. And that's really what it was. And I pushed back for years and years. And now for them to see me in a contemporary art world and a more visual sort of, I guess like just a wider audience and something that's a little bit more conceptual than a mathematical, hyper-realistic oil painting is interesting to see as well. Yeah. To see how they feel about it.
It's interesting. It comes in a way full circle.
Yeah.
That your venture into contemporary art maybe as a reaction to your family's perfection or proficiency in painting, and then your desire to come back, and the kids that you actually brought together in their response to you, it was in paint. So I found that really interesting and fascinating.
Out of Love Me, as is life.
Out of a sticker, out of this kind of movement.
It always comes full circle.
It comes into that form. It's really interesting. I'm going to ask you a question that a colleague of mine actually asked me to ask you. Will. And And it was about collaborations, and it was about your collaborations with artists and brands, and I think I'll end with that before I open it up for questions. And when you're collaborating, are you collaborating to transform the art in Love Me in particular, to reinvent different forms of art, or are you collaborating to spread and disseminate kind of the message even further and have that wider impact? What's the purpose behind why you collaborate or why you'd like to collaborate?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. Collaborating can be, it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse to a certain extent. I mean, for me personally, studio practice and having, absolutely no restrictions, absolutely nobody that I'm working with or has any other ideas, or, that's where I thrive. That's where, those are the most important times for me. Collaborations fall into, I think that the idea of spreading the message is huge for that. Yeah. Just reaching more people in general. Yeah. All right.
Well, great. I'm going to open this up because I know there'll be questions. Sabio, I know, has many.
I'm sure he does.
But yeah, I'd love to open it up, and if anyone has any questions for Curtis, if you have observations or if you're dying to put a sticker up.
Please do.
Please.
I have a question.
Yes.
We didn't discuss the curve on the bottom of the sticker. What's that about?
The curve.
The smile.
The curve. What is the shape of the mouth?
Yeah, so why did you choose to make it
a smiley?
Yes.
Wow, that's a really great question. That's a really great question. I think that it falls into that same category as bringing it back to Love Me being this positive entity. I couldn't imagine making, like a straight mouth, or definitely not a frown. Yeah, it would fall into the same similarities as Love Me being this positive entity that exists, and in hopes that it is doing justice in terms of happiness and putting a positive message out. I like that question.
Great. Thanks, Rihanna.
I forgot that other expressions exist. Could have done many.
Yeah, hi. Amongst all the collaborations you've done, have you done all the collaborations you want to do? Or is there a collaboration still out there that you're dying to do with someone, or in some form that either hasn't come to you or you haven't plucked up the courage to ask for?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these, I shouldn't say a lot, all have come to me. I really try to spend, and again, I'm not trying to, disseminate collaborating, but all of these corporate projects have come from them approaching me. I'm not, a master of putting proposals out, or things that could come of, or approaching brands that I'm dying to work with. So they have always, and I'm very grateful for that these have come, and I make the best of them always. But I on my end, and in terms of the studio, I spend very little time reaching out or even getting in my head and starting to have a process of who I would want to work with.
And what about, I'm going to just go on to Will's question. Have you come across, is there any angle or artist or concept that you've been either tickled by or inspired by while you've been here that you'd want to explore? And whether it's within the Love Me context or beyond that. And even, today you were even talking about the amazing empty spaces that there are out there. So whether it's in this urban context, which has been your canvas throughout the years, or in a more particular format.
Yeah, environment-wise, this is my first time traveling to Saudi Arabia, so environment-wise, it's something that I've really never encountered in terms of, it just feels vast, it feels open, it's colors that I haven't seen, it's walls that look certain ways, doors that look certain ways, signage that's, you know, particular. Again, I've been here for the week, and there's been a lot of traveling back and forth from hotel to Biennale, but I have taken time to walk around, and I mean, it's wonderful here, and I've been absolutely inspired the whole time. So it takes a bit for me to process it, and I think later on it kind of comes into my practice. So.
Oh, great. We'll be here when you think of something.
Great.
And any other questions we have? No? So with that, Curtis, you know, I really encourage everyone to pop by the installation and play a little bit. And I think what your art has done thus far, at least with Love Me, has kind of triggered a lot of playfulness. And in so many ways, it's see me and love me. And so that unified message of optimism is such a great canvas on its own. And I'm very curious to see how you develop your projects later, and even how the darker side of you know, the dark light, like you described it, may also come about and some of your future projects. We wish you the best. We wish you stay and come back many times.
Yes, absolutely.
And thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.